Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Zach, and here we talk about overlanding, gear, builds, DIY, all sorts of stuff related to modifying your vehicle. Today we want to talk a little bit more about dual battery systems. So I've been sort of stringing this out for a little while now, but I finally have all the parts. I had to order some parts. I was waiting on working with some companies, and also Blaze Off-Road developed some sweet new stuff as well. So this whole system has really come together, and I'm really stoked to show you. So first off, before I kind of get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to Full Throttle Battery, Red Arc, and Blaze Off-Road. Look, it's taken me roughly 3 to 4 months to put this system together because I've had to do things on my side to kind of make this system work and happen. So these companies sell the top of the line premier products. And in order to make this sort of content for you all and just showcase some of these features that these companies have, it takes a little bit on my side to get all of this coordinated and put together. And with that being said, I'm really stoked to show you all about this system. But I just want to give a shout out to these companies for working with me. I did a ton of research and I shot my shot, and they were willing to work with me on this content. So I hope you guys enjoy it. What we're going to be talking about is basically how I set up this dual battery setup with a dual battery charger, BCDC from Red Arc. And then I'll just kind of touch on the Garmin systems I've switched to. I have a different video about it. I'll put it up in the top somewhere. But Blaze Off-Road sells just about everything as well. So he's a one-stop shop for a lot of this. And he'll probably run sales on occasion. And if he doesn't, he has a sweet rewards program where if you purchase something, you'll get cash back to use towards a different purchase. All right, let's jump over to the top-down camera. So this is the BCDC 1240D. It is a 12 volt at 40 amp in-vehicle battery charger. We're gonna be using this to basically charge our dual battery off of our single battery. And the single battery, or I guess you could call it the starter battery. And what's cool is it works with multiple types of batteries. So like AGM gel, lead acid, and lithium batteries. And right off the bat, it's going to explain to us that depending upon what kind of alternator you have, we need to either connect or not connect this blue wire. We'll get into that in a little bit. For now, I just want to unbox this thing and see everything that comes in the package. So it's quite simple, I guess. We've got our BCDC. We've got a little manual here that kind of helps us probably walk through this. And then we've got a bunch of wires that we got to connect to stuff. And then we've got some heat shrink and female to female connectors included here. So that's easy enough. And now we just got to maybe draw out a bit of a diagram here and figure out which things need to plug into what. And it comes with a little sticker, so that's pretty slick. All right, well, let's jump into this, figure out where each thing gets plugged into. Before we get too far into this, I just want to show this right here. So essentially what we're gonna do is we've got some wires coming out of the BCDC. We've got a ground wire, which is this black wire right here. That's gonna go to ground. We've got a yellow wire, which would go to your solar panel if you have one. I don't have one, but maybe in the future. We've got a brown wire, which will go to the dual battery. And then we've got a red wire, which will go to the starter battery. And then we're left with only 3 wires left, which is orange, green, and blue. Blue is a trigger wire for smart alternators. I think just good practice here is probably to connect this to your ignition fuse. It just needs a signal coming from your vehicle when your vehicle's on. So it knows when the vehicle's on, and that's kind of a bypass. And then here, we've got an orange wire and a green wire. The combination of these you can use for LEDs and some other things, but then like if you have a lithium battery, you connect the two together. Just kind of depends on what your batteries are. If you're going to be going with the lower charging profile, which is like below 15 volts, which I think is probably most people's use case, but not sure, you just leave this orange wire as an open circuit, and the green wire can be like a status wire or something. My plan is to not use the green wire, and the orange wire I'll just cap as well. So basically we just have these 4 wires to connect: ground, brown, red, and blue. So that's the plan. We've got to jump out to the vehicle and basically start connecting up some stuff. These wires look to be 8 gauge, but I'm not quite sure. There's some included female to female connectors, and there's some heat shrink. Does it say on the side here? Well, I would presume it is 8 gauge, maybe 6 gauge, I'm not sure. But before we connect that out at the vehicle, I want to show a couple other things we're going to be using here. So I did this kind of behind the scenes, but this is the Blaze Off-Road BCDC bracket. It's pretty awesome. Comes with hardware. I use my own hardware here just because I had some laying around, but it comes with hardware. And this basically just goes under your battery and sandwiches down between the battery and your clamp. So you don't need to attach it to the vehicle in a specific way. That is how you're going to do so. And then I've already got a full throttle battery in my vehicle right now, but we have a second full throttle battery right here. They recommend their Group 35 battery because it's a little bit smaller footprint. And so that will give us a little bit of extra space working with that. And then we also have the C4 dual battery tray here. I've had this for a while, and we're going to be hooking this back up inside the vehicle. I removed it temporarily so that I could route some cables, but we'll put that back in. And then last but not least, we have got the SDHQ battery terminal kit. I'll link all this stuff below, but it's just a nice way of connecting some terminal block fuses and some grounding cables rather than just using, you know, the OEMs or some sort of off-brand one that's maybe not designed for multiple terminals like this. If you really wanted to go crazy, you could probably put their expanded terminals that I have on my starter battery, but I think this will be enough for the dual battery, or the auxiliary battery. All right, well, I think that's basically everything as far as accessories go. I just wanted to quick show you all that. Now all we got to do is get out to the vehicle and swap around a couple of my battery cables, and that should sort of set us up here. But otherwise, you'll probably need to order the BCDC battery cables kit from Red Arc, or I think there's a potential that Blaze Off-Road is just going to release a kit that's designed for like 4Runners and Tacomas or something like that. So stay on the lookout for that. I'll link it below if that gets released. But for now, this is everything we need, and I think most of the cables I need are already in my engine bay. So let's jump out there and let's start getting this stuff installed. Okay, so on this side here, I've got my surge plate. This I've cut up a lot to fit my safety hub here. And then I'm saving this space. It might be helpful for something. I just don't know what, but I didn't want to cut it all off. We just have nice access now here for all these larger gauge wire. So I've ran a couple things through the engine, I guess, firewall, and got just a couple other wires here just for anything that might come in the future. I've got these wires ran to the trunk, which are for my rear power switch from Garmin. And they're just kind of hanging in there for now. I got to zip tie them up. But yeah, we're getting this all prepped so I can put my C4 battery tray back in, and then we'll start getting everything mounted up. All right, let's get at it. All right, so we've got the dual battery tray all mounted up now. You can watch this in a different video if you want to see how I did this, but got to grab the battery now, mount that in, and then we can start routing cables to the BCDC. All right, so now we've got the battery mounted up, so that's looking good. What I did was, put that one on first, and then you can kind of pull it over the top. I left a little bit of space in here so that I've got some space to route cables and also reach down to the pass-through and just give a little bit extra space on this side for the connections, just because, you don't want to hit ground with the red side of the battery, but the black, it's like not really a big deal. So also, hopefully this is a little safer, and it gives me a little more space for my terminal block on this side. Alrighty, let's keep moving. Okay, so like most installs, it's starting to get a little bit dark here, but I'm basically now just routing all the wires. So this side here, I've got one of the terminal connections for the dual battery. We've got a bunch of connections here. We've got one 40 amp source coming in from the BCDC. This could be 60 amps per their instructions. I'm fusing it a little low just to see if it'll pop, to see what kind of amperage is running through there. I've got a 100 amp that's set up for basically low power switch draw in the trunk. all those lights are going to be pretty small. And then I've got a 125 amp running to my power switch over there. And then I've got a 100 amp running to my safety hub here. I don't know if this 100 is a little bit low, but again, if it pops, oh well, I'll put a bigger one in. I like to fuse low so that all my gauge wires are overbuilt. So I set this up this way because the 100 amp is closest to here, so I can just run it to there, to here. This 125 is going to go back across, and then we've got the 40 amp that's going to go over across front to the BCDC. And then we've got one that's going to go back here over and straight down through the engine bay. Straight through the firewall. Okay, so then we also have to route a ground wire from here over to that battery. We've also got to route a ground wire from here to this grounding bar. And I think that's the bulk of the wires for now. But yeah, still just routing everything. And before it gets too dark, I wanted to provide a little update. So over here, we've got a bunch of stuff taken off of here, but essentially all that's going to be connected to the starter battery is the winch and the BCDC connection right here that will power the BCDC. So everything is basically good to go here. I just got to keep connecting wires, and then eventually we'll pull this whole battery so we can slide that bracket underneath and start just connecting the BCDC. But at this point, I'm basically doing that last. So, all right, well, let's keep moving. Okay, so I had to remove the battery because there's just not enough space to work. I've routed all my cables. There's this metal bracket down here right next to the battery that holds some of the battery harnesses that are OEM. So I ran that around there, kind of zip tied it out of the way. Routed the ground cable for this to the negative terminal here. I routed the power that comes from the battery to my fuse block. I routed my blue ignition cable right here, and then inside that sheathing I just hid my solar and my orange and blue wires. They're all taped off and out of the way, but that's just kind of a safe place to keep them stored. And I'll grab my ignition trigger that's coming out of my fuse box. And then I've routed my cable around here up to go over to the dual battery. I've got my dual battery input set up for charging. Got my cable ran from here over to the power switch. We've got two more fuses here, one for the safety hub and one for my other power switch. So got stuff routed. Got a ground cable laying here that will route over to the battery. And yeah, we're getting pretty close here. This is looking good. So I left my orange cable disconnected because I've got a AGM battery, and I think we're basically ready to go here. If I didn't have a smart alternator, I don't think I even need to connect the blue wire. But as far as I can understand, it doesn't hurt to connect the blue wire. So I'm gonna connect it up. So, all right, well, pretty close to getting everything put back together at least. Let's keep moving. All right, so we got everything wired up on this side here. The safety hub has its power and ground. Ran up to this battery. We were able to fit the STHQ battery terminal cover on this one, but it doesn't fit very well on the positive terminal, given the fact that we've got these big Blue Seas fuses. So here is a 100 amp feed going to the safety hub 150. It's probably underfused, but hasn't popped, and I'll just stick with that for now. We've got 125 going to the Garmin. We've got a 100 amp that will go for the rear Garmin. And then we've got a 40 amp right here that will run to the BCDC. Come over here. Got everything hooked up over here as well. Got the winch and the 50 amp feed to the BCDC, which is right down here. And then we've got our ground side, which grounds a bunch of stuff. And then here is the Garmin power switch kit from Blaze Off-Road. Single system kit, and I've got another video on that, but pretty easy, straightforward install. The kit comes with literally everything. It's quite straightforward. But if we look here at the BCDC, see how it's blinking A? That means that we're charging with the voltage profile that we should be using for an AGM battery. So it's like high 14s voltage. And then if we start the car, it will show us where there's charging going on for the vehicle. All right, so I just turned off the vehicle, but basically what that does is it just measures the voltage on the batteries and charges them up until they reach a certain voltage, and then it will turn off the charging. So right there, the batteries, I guess, needed to be topped off a little bit. Not quite sure what that voltage is, but yeah, there will be input then from the alternator and from a solar panel if you hook it up to always be charging them. And then once they reach a certain voltage, there's a switch that will turn off. So this is primarily a charger, but it also acts like an isolator, because if it's disconnecting these positive terminal cables, it's essentially an isolator. So yeah, pretty sweet little setup here. The BCDC doesn't come with like a jump feature, so that's something I'm still looking into. I might add, where basically what you can do is this just controls connections for charging, and it also facilitates charging with a solar panel. But you can get systems where it will connect your dual battery in parallel with your starter battery, for the sake of jump starting your starter. So if something were ever to happen where for some reason your starter is just dead and your dual battery wasn't depleted and has charge, you could use it to jump start your starter battery. So it's a cool feature. It wouldn't really take too much to install here, so that's something I'm looking into in the future. But yeah, this is a wrap for now. One thing I do want to do is probably mount something here. I'm still kind of toying around with what I should mount here, but I've got some cool ideas. So stay tuned for that. I think that's going to be pretty sweet. But man, the engine bay is really coming together. It's quite the dual battery setup, and I'm pretty stoked for it. The safety hub is really a sweet modification. So if you are wanting to do something like this, you know, this is the Rago Fabrication surge plate and safety hub 150. You can buy them at a range of places. Blaze Off-Road sells them, and they're super handy for running a little bit higher power. So yeah, so this runs the power to my Desert Does It bracket for my ARB compressor. But all right, well, that's everything. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them down below. Well, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Thank you so much for watching. There's a ton of products I used in this video, some of which are affiliate links to help support my channel, but some that are not, and I just try to link to kind of help, you know, point you in the direction of which products I've used. Hopefully a lot of that made sense. If you are confused about any of it, I'll try to answer the questions down below. If you feel like I made a mistake, please comment that down below as well. I am not a vehicle wiring professional here, and so I do what I can based off of all the research I do. I try to be really thorough in the research that I do, but I'm not perfect. So definitely kind of fact check me if you want to push back and you think that I did something that you wouldn't recommend or that you don't think is smart. Please comment that down below. I love the positive critiques, and some of you have really taught me a lot about the stuff that we do to our vehicles. So thank you all for the support. If you're trying to tackle some of this wiring and you don't feel comfortable doing it, just consider driving your vehicle to Blaze Off-Road. He is probably one of the most capable wirers in the overlanding space. So just take your vehicle to his shop. It's not worth risking if you're really uncomfortable with this stuff. If you are wanting to learn more about these things, he's got some good YouTube videos. There's other great YouTube videos out there. Blue Seas has some wiring gauge, articles and other things like that. So there's plenty of resources out there to read if you're wanting to learn more about how to do some of this stuff. And I think even Redarc has some tutorial information about this stuff on their Instagram, YouTube, and website as well. And they've helped me, kind of learn what I have. So thank you so much for the support. Like I said, I'll have any discounts or links that I have linked down below, and I will catch you all in the next video.